I was just watching an indigenous tribes leader on Twitter who I don't like very much. He was lecturing people on the um, mighty equity of pocket change. And part of a totalitarian school of thought, defending the environment. Will Zell was in on Mount Desert Island. It's important to remember that when I was in Mount Desert Island, I didn't yet connect that the men who had played, the boys who had played King Crimson's 21st century schizoid man, Cat's Foot, Iron Claw, neurosurgeon, Scream for More, Paranoia's Poison Door, were actually in neurosurgery. Then I began to see the annotations in Schizoid Man. Like Paranoia's Poison, Greg Carl wrote the dialectic is established at the outset. He talks about forces impinging. It's a gaslighting experiment that's so cruel that it intends brain surgery outcome. And I didn't know they'd implanted a neuro. And they've now given me Parkinson's. And it came from the Jewish community. Ian knew, and the Catholic services. Ian Wanamaker knew the names of every governor when he was like 12 or 13 years old. He used to brag about it. Tell me, pick one. I'll tell you who it is. Pick a state. So that clearly, the Carls told me a story about the Green Man. The Green Man had hit by lightning and nobody wanted to play with him. That was the sort of cruel minds that they had. They were always picking on people. They would bring my nephew to tears a lot by what he called ostracism. You know, they would ditch him was one of their games. They'd invite him out and then run for it. Well, the Jewish Holocaust survivor community, Wadmaker's father was um, a psychiatrist for Attica State Prison. And Beth Blumenfeld was bas mitzvah down in the synagogue behind, which is a used car repair shop run by car thieves who kidnapped me at Donald Ostro's house, who battered me and tortured me as a child, where Saul Brecker corralled me. Lou Brecker's son. And Didi's lube, they say, had been wrecked and so on. Michel Lubin was one of them. Michel overcome Michel Lubin in the totality. So they knew that the way to scare people into line is to get them to distance themselves from a pariah group. You know, I'm not a Jew. I used to have Elizabeth Penrose running around. I'm not a Jew. So the idea of having an obligatory communion with the spirits to die by AIDS and death vow and blood oath was too demented and pre-attached to the overall circus of death that was premeditated in the script ever to have gotten any traction. Yet it continues to hold reign among the very stupid Seattle civics community. And of course, it spread like wildfire that way. They even had an illustration of the mind game, which was based on a burning barn, which horses ran to the burning barn in this neighborhood when it went on fire. They broke loose and rode to their deaths. This was the whole behavioral model of the planning commission behind the attack. And um, they continue to do it. Cornell West called it um, biological linkage. Oliver Stone probably called it No One Gets Out of Here Alive, based on Jim Morrison's adage and so forth. So, and the attorney for the Krokag, by whom I mean Yoko Ono, I don't really feel it's all that appropriate to treat her with the dignities of a personage of respect, because she's criminally insane. It's horrifying what they've done with Revolution Number 9. Her attorney, Amanda Harcourt, who, by the way, lied to my face I love you, man. Oh, I was so relieved it was from you, not some weirder than thou type. A real bitter, spiteful, to the face loss. I mean, you can't fob it off. This was some chick who was disappointed that you didn't want to make out with her. Fripp had very specifically said not to get involved in personal correspondences, personal relationships with his staff, so I didn't. So if you have this situation cooked up, you have to know who Amanda Harcourt is. You have to see that Wattenmaker was a neurosurgeon and the King Crimson people were lying to the victim's face. So she was an attorney for hair, among other things, Yoko Ono and hair. So if you look at the hair relationship to Pittsburgh, it's very clear that Berger, for example, was from Pittsburgh. They were playing, masquerading at different roles. Godspell was from Pittsburgh. This emerges from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, who in secret were burning girls' arms gangrenous with pokers from the fireplace. No joke. His gardener was a felon who attacked me brutally as a child. His gang tore my head off. And Leonard Nimoy used to come around the scene. So it's highly illogical, right? Mr. Rogers and the preacher of Mr. Rogers' church would made a mission to Mount Desert Island when they were pulling the catharsis. Leslie Couch used to wait for her bus at the 74A bus stop outside on that corner. There was a Leslie Park over where Salt Research Lab locked me in the house from the inside. Some guy goes, I saw somebody head over to the corner. That was me trying to get out the back door. He brutally attacked me. His name was Casper. And of course, I'm going to be the grain man eventually because of the Parkinson's job they did on me. So nobody's going to want anything to do with me. So they already did this number to me. But in fact, when they shot up Tree of Life, they herded everybody down to that corner. So 74 is the best number, was in fact in the script, as well as a description of a girl named Leslie who looks like a mouse. They had Polly Soundstill. There's a Polly in the script. Gail Burstyn used to live with a Polly. Polly Soundstill had a dog named Calhoun, which wasn't named for the president. It was named for the mouse theorist who said that overpopulated mice start attacking each other. So the Jews said, we don't want them to say, I'm not about the Jews again. We're going to get them to say, I'm not about the contagion people. And so they started saying, it's good to be contagion. And in fact, one of the Catholic dudes who had access to my house stocked hundreds and even the thousands of murder mysteries in the basement. Also had a copy down there of Maximilian Kolbe's No Greater Love, the Catholic worker who gained sainthood by getting put into the crematoriums at Auschwitz. So they had it all planned out. We're going to incinerate one for the tribe. And they get licky chop pornography going from Seattle social workers who said the black man got the Japanese hottie in the two virgins footsie ball, man. Oh. And this is the way they think and how easily manipulated they are. It's terribly troubling, awfully troubling, because the issue is how they think that we ended up in this nightmare with Flame Over Africa. He did cover stories for Ono and tortured me as a child, took me hostage. He even says cameo in Prison's Disaster. He only showed up once. He made a cameo at Donald's, where ostracized me. Then they said, "Oh, it's a little big time for the girl from Neva Corporation," and this evidently had something. Rhapsody in Midwest folk ways. After my father left my mother, they decided that I had been abandoned and no longer had heritage rights and could be used by anybody who wanted to. I was up for grabs. And when he went into public schools development, that was the state ways he abandoned his son, can't change folkways. Corals would polish up the Crowley name that by Gooberin, Ned like me, they chased me into a coffin and brought in a self-described Nazi warrior with big bosoms. And this was, like Seven Beauties being made by Lucifers who were running moonshine for Reagan and Clint Eastwood and the other uh, brilliance. Happy brilliance with their spinner hats on the hill. The brilliance on the hill. Doo, 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 doo. And Ringo Starr it has this stuff about the Buko's stupid code about what girls should do and boys should do. And they give me a pre-engagement ring with a diamond that I gave to Dee. So they were playing all figured out. They had a slap hammer with a little droplet on it. And they had it all figured out, man. Oh, yeah. And they were doing covers for, I don't know, Flame Over Africa. And they're laughing, oh, Queerwall, he's gonna whimper us into best ecology practices. Yeah. There are people who realize that you can't change the world without changing your society and community. And you do have to be ecologically conscious. But they've created a forcing house so they can get rid of a lot of people with the genocide. They say, oh, don't eat animals and don't think you're better than us. And, and the finding that when I came to Seattle, get this, the best bookstore in Seattle at the time, Ichiro showed up. I go into the Ichiro bookstore. It's called Kinokuniya. And there's this magazine, Would We Be Better Off If Hitler Had Won? My Friend Hitler. Grapefruit by Yoko Ono, all figured on a picture of Paul McCartney pulling a derringer out of his pants, and or a lookalike of Paul McCartney. And these were the people who, put on masks and lit torches at the yachts to celebrate 9/11, right? And the magazine said, yes, we would be better off if Hitler had won because we'd be looking after the environment. So, if you look in my history, I already knew that they were calling it Little Girl. This isn't to say that Greta Thunberg has ever answered my question. Did she know in advance about COVID-19? Greta, if you say no, I will believe you. But until you answer the question, I have to assume that you're ashamed of the way they used you and don't want to answer the question. I recommend that you read through Moxieland, at least the synopsis of Moxieland. They had it all set up. The 74A bus stop outside Mr. Rogers' church was Arnold's daughter. And Arnold puts words in your mouth, get them to connect the dots, little girl. What's connect the dots? Obama entered into office, and his first act was to forgive the oil tycoons of the Detroit auto lobby who had ripped off the banks for all of their loans. He forgave them. He could have said, I'm not going to forgive you, and I'm not going to let you rebuild the automobile industry. I'm going to switch to mass transit. But he was not a very progressive or bright individual. And of course, he's being rescued among the many saints of our critical race theory society who's being rescued by a little girl from abroad. And they knock off seriously to make way for their little girl. I don't want revenge on the woman I love. I'm not out to get her. I'm not out to marry her. I'm not out to hurt her. I'm not out to anything her, but urge people to listen to her message. I just want her to assure me that she wasn't advised in advance about COVID-19, because if she was, then in my opinion, she is a war criminal. I don't have anything I can do about that. I was in a position where they blamed me for AIDS. I realized that you're in a position where they can blame you for COVID-19. And I'm the green man, remember? You don't want to be anything like me, so you keep your mouth shut. Well, okay, that's fine. Enjoy your totality.